Okay guys, today's recipe, we're going to make some beef stew, actually like a vegetable beef soup, more or less, with some leftover prime rib. I've already gone ahead and I've got my water on. You just kind of judge how much liquid you want in your soup. You may be adding more water later, that's fine. It's plain water right now. Got the fire on. Going to add in the leftover prime rib. Now, I have not cut all of this off the bone. I have left it. I'm actually going to drop it into the water whole. Just like that. Any little extra pieces, bone and all. You can use any kind of meat. If you want to use regular stew meat, designed for these soups, as we see them packaged in the supermarket, you can take that, you season it up, cover it in flour, and then you put a little bit of oil in the bottom of your pan before you add the water. You sear the meat to lock it all in, get it nice and brown crust. Then you would add your water and start from there. But I had pre-cooked this prime rib a few days ago, threw it in the freezer, what we didn't eat, and now we're going to make a nice vegetable beef soup out of it. I have pre-cut my vegetables. I've got just common things that you can find in your fridge. I did celery, potatoes, I had a squash, I've got some carrots, and 2 onions. Now, I'm going to go ahead and sloppily add this, as you can tell, this entire mixture to my pot. Now you can see where it brought my water level up to. Nice and up there. We've got other things to add in as well. We're going to add in 2 cans of tomatoes. You can use diced tomatoes, whole tomatoes, stewed tomatoes, whatever your favorite type of canned tomatoes are, or if you've happen to can some from your garden. The fresh canned tomatoes are wonderful in the soups. And that's how I grew up. I remember my mom just took things out of the freezer that we would store from the garden, or she would do canning during the year, and that was how I grew up, on soups, that she would just pull stuff she had made from our garden out and throw it in the pot, and man, it was good. We grew up on some hot soup though. She always puts peppers in her soup, and I would love to do that. But this particular batch of soup I am actually making for 2 ladies in Massachusetts that probably would not appreciate a hot pepper sneaking up on them. So we're gonna forego that this time. To this pot, you guys remember, I always told you about the staple, the better than bouillon. I started off with plain water. Normally, you would start off with like a vegetable base or a beef base broth, your choice. And you see them in, I think Pepperidge Farm makes them in the boxes, Wolfgang Puck, I don't know. There's a couple of different ones that are pretty good. I tend not to buy the generic only because the sodium in the generic, if you'll notice, is so much higher than your regular brands. You're going to pay a little more, but you're also going to live a little bit longer. Okay. To this, let me grab a spoon because I forgot to do that. We are going to add probably a generous 2 tablespoons of this. One more generous tablespoon. Make a nice beefy broth. Not that our prime rib won't add to that. And that prime rib's going to cook right off the bone because we're going to let this soup stew for a while. And it'll eventually cook right off the bone. I'll be able to pull the couple of bones out that are in there because, as you know, prime rib is rib bones. So it'll be nice large size bones that I can find easily and pull out. But the meat will just fall off them. It'll flavor your broth. Everything's just going to come together wonderfully. Now, this pot is going to be a little full, and some of the liquid will cook off. I still have 2 cans of tomatoes to add, and these are just Del Monte with zesty mild green chilies. Again, any kind. This is just what I happen to have in the cabinet, so this is what I wanted to use. That's one can. Let's see if we can fit another in here. I don't want to get too much going on right now, just because we want to not overflow this. And the liquid will go down after I pull the bones out as well, because you remember I've got all that extra weight displacement in here from that. That will. Ooh, look at that nice piece of prime rib. Look at that. See, that's already. Can you just imagine? That's just going to be wonderful. Okay, we're going to let that cook a bit. And after this cooks a little while, let me see. Let me grab another spoon, because I'll actually do this with a fork. I'm the garlic lover, remember. I want to go ahead and get my garlic in here. Just a generous amount. A soup is something that I seriously, guys, I don't measure, because it just depends on how much you're making for yourself. If you want a small pot, you know, you gauge it. You know what to put in there, the amounts. This, I just knew I was making a big old pot of soup, because we may end up splitting it up if it's too big. But we had a little ice storm out there overnight, snow and ice, and it ended up topping us mostly with ice. So this will be nice to warm us up in a bit. With that, let's see, that was my garlic. Okay, let's go ahead and do our other seasonings. Let's do a little bit of black pepper. Actually, that's a lot, but that's okay, because we've got a lot of liquid and we know that it's going to cook off. Thyme leaves. And again, I just play around with spices. I just started looking over there when I was prepping for this video. I started looking, oh, what do I have over there in the spice rack that'd be good in soup? And just kind of pulled a few flavors out that I knew would go well together. This is thyme leaves. Just sprinkled a nice little generous amount of thyme leaves on there. Let's see, we did the black pepper, thyme. Let's do our salt. And I know y'all are like, how do you know how much salt to add? You haven't even tasted it, because you added all that high sodium beef paste in there. Well, yes, I did. But remember, we've also got a lot of water. We have potatoes, which have a sweetness to them anyway. A natural sweetness that will actually offset some of the sodium. So you're safe. You start really tasting it towards the end, and if you need to adjust the salt, you can. And if you found that you've oversalted your soup, you can add in, cut a whole potato in half, and throw it down in there and let it cook a bit with a teaspoon of sugar. And that should help bring your salt content down a bit. We're just stirring this around just to kind of get our seasonings and all down in there and incorporate it into everything. Give it a little. Yeah, guys. Okay. We're going to let this cook for a little bit. And then I'm going to come back and we're going to add in things like a can of whole kernel corn, juice and all. So we're going to have to let this cook down just a bit. And a can of green beans I found. Normally I would do like the whole green beans, but I guess there must have been a sale on French style green beans, because I have 47 cans of that. So we're going to roll with French style green beans up in there. You don't have to put any beans if you don't want to. Totally up to you. I'm just going to happen to do it on this. Ooh, tomato paste. Look, I forgot. Okay, let's put this in. Can of tomato paste. Just because we want to bring a nice little tomatoey balance to it, because you could, if you hadn't put the meat in there, you could rock this either way. For you vegetarians out there, use the vegetable base better than bouillon, and make it all about the veggies. Do a veggie soup for yourself. You can also add noodles to this if you want. I'm not gonna, just because I've got it. It's a nice hearty soup with the vegetables and the meat. So we're going to leave it like that. Wow. I don't know if I ever took a breath or not. I think I talked through that whole thing. But anyway, so I think we've got the last of what we're going to put in there right now. We're going to let this simmer for a bit. Try to bring down some of the liquid. Then I'm going to come back. And we're going to add in the corn and the green beans. And let it cook a little bit longer. And go from there. And you guys will get to see the finished product. Hopefully this it's shown up in the camera enough that you like it. Looks good to me. We're going to take a break now. When we come back, this will be cooked down. We'll add in our other veggies, and we'll call it a day. Thanks, guys. Okay, guys, we're back. We're just going to add our corn and green beans in. Like I said, everything came off the bone perfectly, so we've already got our meat in. The juice did cook down a little. I drained a little of the juice off of this. Probably about half of the juice out of each can before I poured it into the pot. So it is in here. Stir it around. Look at the beef. I mean, it just cooked wonderfully and fell right off the bone. So I didn't have to worry about anything other than pulling the bones out. But again, regular stew meat, venison, whatever you want to use is fine. And that's really the last part of it. You can use frozen vegetables as well, fresh vegetables. It really doesn't matter. Since I'm using the canned vegetables, I did add them right at the end because really all they need to do is heat. The flavor's already there. You don't want to just cook them down until they fall apart. So, you know, that's why I do that. So this is it. This is basically a basic vegetable beef soup. I did add, while we were off camera, I added a little bit of oregano, dried oregano leaves, and a couple of bay leaves. Now, what I've heard, it's a good idea before you serve your soup to make sure you pull any whole bay leaves out of the soup. They do not soften when they cook, so if someone were to ingest them, which, you know, hopefully no one would eat a whole bay leaf, but you never know. People do weird things. If you eat it, then it could tear your intestines. So that's what I've heard. Don't know if it's true. Y'all can Google that if you want. I don't know. I pulled them out because who wants to eat a whole bay leaf up in their soup? But that's it, guys. Vegetable beef soup. Hope you enjoy.